Hey guys, it's Andy, aka LG, aka Loggy. I'm here with another Magic the Gathering deck tech video. Haven't done one of these in a while, but these are fun to make and they seem to get a decent amount of views, so I'm back with another one. And today's deck is actually for Standard. Bloomburrow just came out about a month ago, and I've been playing the hell out of Standard using frogs, Simic frogs on Arena. I liked the deck so much that I bought a version to use in paper, and I plan on showing that to you today. So, par for the course, let's begin with lands. To begin with, I have 12 basics in total, 8 forests, and 4 islands. That is a lot of basics, but keep in mind Standard did just rotate finally, so mana isn't as good as it once was, though I guess we did just lose like slow lands and triumphs, so not a big loss for a deck like this that is actually more aggressive, but it is worth noting. In the place of those lands, however, we do have the fast lands, originally printed in Kaladesh, which is where this Botanical Sanctum is from. Nothing against the new Outlaws artwork, but I prefer the original Kaladesh art. Looks very nice. Taps to add blue or green, by the way, but it enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or fewer lands, so it's a fast land. You need to play it fast, otherwise you lose the ability to use it right away. To go with that, I have the Pain lands. 4 copies of Yavimaya Coast, looking very nice. Full border, or whatever you want to call it. I don't know the terminology, but I just like the way it looks. Adds a colorless by default, but you can pay 1 life to add blue or green. So it's like Botanical Sanctum, that it adds blue or green. And then I have a one of, this is a new card from Bloomburrow, Oak Hollow Village. You can tap it again to add a colorless, or you can add a green mana, but you can only spend that mana to cast a creature spell. Spoiler alert, we have a lot of creatures in here. And then you can also pay a green and tap it to put a 1/1 counter on each frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel you control that enter the battlefield this turn. We do not have any rabbits, raccoons, or squirrels, but we do have plenty of frogs, so that could come up. But only a one of, because we have a lot of... we do have a lot of creatures, but we also have a lot of non-creatures, so it's not a land you want in multiple copies. So, yeah, nice Oak Hollow Village. I also have Hedge Maze from Murders at Karlov Manor, a forest island that enters tapped, but when it does enter, you can surveil one, so a very solid land. This land style is being played all the way back in, I think, Legacy or something, so because it's good. You can fetch it out with fetch lands and stuff, so very good land. You can surveil on a whim when you fetch. Well, we don't have fetch lands in Standard, of course, but it's still a good land. Coming into play tapped can hurt a bit in an aggro deck, that's why I only have 1, but being able to surveil is good enough that I had to include a copy. And then finally, the last 2 lands, I have 2 Cavern of Souls. Again, we do have a lot of creatures. They are all frogs, so we'll always be naming frog with Cavern. Well, not always, because my sideboard's a little different, but mostly be naming frog. However, I only included 2 because I mentioned we have a lot of creatures, but we also have a lot of non-creatures, and our non-creatures are pivotal for winning, so I didn't want to be cluttered down with colorless producing lands in the case that I have a bunch of non-creatures. So only 2. Only seems to be a problem when I come up versus counterspell decks and I can't find my Cavern. Other than that, it's pretty good. But now we move on to the creatures. This is a 1-drop 1 mana 1/1. It's called Valley Might Caller. Has trample, and anytime another frog, rabbit, raccoon, or squirrel enter under our control, you put a 1/1 counter on it. So this 1-drop grows very fast. It's like a Champion of the Parish or Champion of the Perished, or trying to think of other ones, but my mind is eluding me right now. Yeah, we play a lot of frogs, so this guy gets pretty huge if he goes unchecked. Other than that, he's just a big dumb 1/1. Not much value aside from that. In very simplified game states, this is the win condition just because it has trample. So I'm not going to rule it out as just a dumb 1-mana creature, because this absolutely can become a win condition in specific board states, but doesn't have the most inherent value in the deck, especially compared to some of these other cards. Speaking of which, we have another 1-mana creature from Bloomburrow. This is Mist Breath Elder, a 1-mana 2/2, so you know it's got a downside. The downside is at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to return another creature you control to your hand. And when you do, you put a 1/1 counter on this. So it's kind of bad, kind of good. There's a line of text here: you may return Mist Breath Elder to your hand. I don't see a reason to ever do that unless you have 2 of them in hand and want to bounce one so you don't have to bounce both. I guess that's the only reason I could think that line of text is there. But with this in play, you will be bouncing your creatures back to your hand, which normally in an aggressive deck seems like it would be bad, but we aren't strictly an aggressive deck. We are more along the lines of like proper mid-range. We can go beneath control-y or mid-rangey builds, but we can also go over the top of certain mid-range or even control builds. So that is what we're hoping to do with this Simic Frog shell, and this kind of helps us facilitate that. So we keep it moving. This is a 2-mana frog from Bloomburrow. Pond Prophet is his name. Hybrid mana Simic. A 2-mana 1/1, but when it enters, you draw a card. So it comes down cantrips, and just putting these two side by side, you can see the play line. Play this on 1, play this on 2. On turn 3, this will bounce back to your hand, so you're losing tempo in that regard, but this is getting bigger. You can play it again and draw more cards, so it is an engine. They made it that way. They wanted that to be the frog gimmick, like frogs hop, so they keep bouncing back to your hands and you get value out of it when they enter. So it's a very nice shell, actually. I like the way frogs were designed and the way they play. And I think making a deck like this, that it can be aggressive, but it can also, you know, grind out a mid-range. I think it works nicely. I like the way it plays. So yeah, just a very solid creature there, even without the frog synergies, but the frog synergies definitely push it over the edge. Now we got a 3-mana creature, again a new frog from Bloomburrow. This is Clifftop Lookout, a 3-mana 1/2 with reach, a far cry from Topiary Stomper, but when it enters you do ramp a land. It isn't like Stomper where you search for any basic land and put it into play. This, you actually reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land and put that land into play, whatever it is, so it doesn't have to be basic. So I think Stomper is still the better card overall, but this is still a very good card to have in Standard. Like, I'm going to be playing this in so many more decks that aren't frog-based. Because, like, in any ramp package, that's, you know, turn 3, add a body to the board and ramp is good, especially when you can blink it and stuff. So, yeah, Clifftop Lookout. Once we get our 3-mana card here, our Clifftop Lookout, and keep bouncing that back and replaying it and get our lands down, that's when we kind of take control of the game and move from a aggressive beatdown playing with Valley Night Color into trying to keep drawing cards and playing more powerful spells. So that's when the fun really begins. But now we come to my favorite card in the deck, probably my favorite card in all of Bloomburrow. 4 copies of a 4-mana frog wizard. Dream, Do, Entrancer. 4-mana 3/4 with reach. But when it enters, you can tap up to 1 target creature. It can be any creature, it can be itself. You don't have to target any creature, so that's already amazing versatility. If you target one of your own creatures, including itself, the creature gets tapped down and 3 stun counters are put on it, so it doesn't untap for like 4 turns. If you tap down your own creature, though, you get to draw 2 cards. So that's, like, there are so many options in so many scenarios where this outright saves you. Like, if you're getting just annihilated by aggro, you can slam this, tap down the most problematic creature. If you're in a more advantageous position, you can slam this down, tap down your innocuous 1/2 or 1/1, draw 2 more cards, and prepare yourself in case you do get wrathed or whatever, to just try to stay as far ahead of your opponent as possible. Like, the amount of cards this draws is kind of crazy. I'm shocked that this has not caught on more. Like, I think it's good in any deck, not specifically frogs, but in frogs it's crazy because you can tap down your, like I said, your cliff top lookouts and your pawn profits that you don't particularly care about as attackers or blockers. So being able to do, and then if you have a Mist Breath of Elder down, you can bounce them back to your hand, and then it's like you didn't even tap them down because you can play them again, get their value again, and then the next turn you can bounce back your Dream Dew and tap your creatures down, draw more cards. So like it's a true engine just with the creatures, and I love that about it. I'm really surprised how cheap this creature package was. All these creatures here were under $1 when I bought them, which is pretty insane. I think, yeah, this was like 59 cents for this, I forget the name, like this extended art version. I got the playset of the other version as well, but I figured if it's only 59 cents, I might as well just get the good looking one. Because yeah, this is probably my favorite card in Bloomburrow. So crazy good value. I even love the art. Like, I want to make so many videos just going over Magic art, because some of it just looks absolutely fantastic, and this one is just so captivating, in addition to being a crazy good Magic card in general. And that is actually all of my creatures. So it may be hard to piece together how this can win a game. Obviously, if we have the perfect scenario, we'll just keep bouncing our stuff back and growing our Valley Might color and attack, but that's not really realistic to imagine that happening every game. So we have to have other things going on. So I have 3 copies of 3 Steps Ahead, which is a counter spell from Outlaws with Spree, which means it costs 1 mana. It has a mana value of 1, but you have to pay additional costs, and you can pay each of these or any of them. So like, cost 1, you can pay an additional 1 and a blue to counter target spell. So it's a 3 mana counter spell, cancel at very base value. But you don't even need to counter spell. You can pay 1 blue and 2 generic to draw 2 cards, then discard a card. You can pay 1 blue and 3 generic and create a token that's a copy of target artifact or creature you control. And you can do any combination of those. You can do all 3 if you have the mana, which now you're picking up what I'm putting down. Only 3 copies though, because we do want to be curving out early game, and holding up mana for something like this is not what we really want to be doing. So I don't want to flood out on too many, but 3 is a good amount. But counter spell this strong is just hard to not main deck, you know what I mean? So especially in a deck so synergistic like this. So yeah, definite, maybe it should be 4 copies, but I only have 3. Now I also have 2 copies of Paw Patch Formation. This is an instant that you choose one. Destroy target creature with flying, so it's plummet with upside, because you can also destroy target enchantment, or you can draw a card. So crazy versatility here. It's like plummet that you can cycle while making a food that you can also naturalize something with. I guess not technically naturalize because it can't hit artifacts, but still, this is an insane amount of versatility. It might be correct to just have 4 copies of this main deck no matter what you're playing, because just of how much versatility it has, or like at least more in the board. But I only have 2 because I'm trying more frog synergies. But yeah, I mean, as a rule of thumb, I think this card might just be generically good enough to run as a 4-of in any deck with green in standard, just because of how versatile, and like none of the modes are bad. That's the thing. Like, usually with a card like this, all modes would be like overpriced and the card would be bad, but all modes are adequately priced. So I think this one might be a bit of a mistake, but we're rocking with it. because we love having main board flying hate, we love having main board enchantment hate, and even if those aren't valid, we can cycle it. So yeah, I'm kind of talking myself into running 4, the same of 3 steps ahead, but you'll see what else we got and why I'm not doing that currently. You know I'm running 4 Innkeeper's Talent, bro. This is kind of an auto-include in any green deck. I learned my lesson with Ranger class back in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It was similar to this, a 2-mana enchantment that put a 1/1 counter on your creatures whenever you attacked. So that one you had to actually pump mana into to get the counters, and you had to attack. This just comes down and automatically puts a 1/1 counter on a creature unconditionally, and you can pump. I suppose I should, in case you don't know what this is like the most expensive card in the set, I think. It's a class, so it enters and has the inherent ability of putting a 1/1 counter on a creature you control at the beginning of combat. That's its baseline effect. You can pump 1 mana into it to level it up, at which case permanents you control with counters on them have ward 1. Can be any counters, loyalty, of course, +1/+1. But yeah, any kind of counters our permanents have ward, and if we have multiple copies of this, by the way, multiple instances of ward will trigger. I don't know how that works, but it does, so that's something. And then finally, you can pump 4 more mana into it, so that if you would put 1 or more counters on a permanent or a player, you put twice that many on instead, so just double the amount of counters you put on something, including planeswalkers, which is why this card is the most expensive card in the set, and everybody's brewing with it. When I got this on my playset, they were like $10 a pop, and now I see it's spiked up to like 25, so I'm glad I bought it when I did. I would have liked to have gotten it sooner, because like I said, I learned my lesson with Ranger class. When I bought that was like $18 a pop, because it was so played in green decks. And then about like a month before it rotated out of standard, it plummeted, and now they're like $1, if that. So I should have bought an Innkeeper's Talent immediately, but I put it off a little bit, but fortunately not too late, because I still made out quite well. So yeah, Innkeeper's Talent plus Vraska, Betrayer's Sting is an immediate combo if you didn't know. But that's not what we're playing. We're doing fair frog things with Innkeeper's Talent, just to pump our frogs and make them into better attackers. Even our weaker ones like Pond Prophet and Clifftop Lookout. And then we're almost done with the main deck. We have 4 copies. It took me like 4 days to notice that this card was named Polywallop, because for the longest time I would read this card and say Polywop. But no, it's Polywallop because the frog is walloping something. I can't make out what it is, but yeah, the frog is walloping. And to coincide with the picture, it's an instant, and it's 4 mana instant, but it costs 1 less to cast for each frog you control. So if you control 3 frogs, it costs 1 green. And target creature you control deals damage equal to twice its power to target creature you don't control. So like, green doesn't really get good creature removal, like it's usually in the form of fight or bite effects. But the problem with those is if you don't have specific creatures out, they don't, the spells don't do what you want them to do, because your creature can't deal enough damage to kill something. But this line of text where it deals twice the power of your creature, it makes that like so inconsequential. Like you can take out so many cards with even little guys if you buff them even 1 time with like Innkeeper's Talent or something. Mist Breath Elder, if you put 1 Innkeeper's Talent counter on it, or you bounce 1 permanent and put a counter on it, so it's a 3/3, you can take out a Sheoldred with a Polywallop. So that, I think, is what makes Polywallop worth being a 4 of. If your creatures are smaller than your opponents, which shouldn't happen in green, but it does if you're playing frogs, it's just something that happens. The fact that it doubles their power and deals that damage to the creature is amazing. And, you know, the discount is amazing. It's just a good card. It's like an instant speed Blizzard Brawl. And we are almost done, actually. The final 3 cards are sorceries that are X spells. The first one is Blue Sun's Twilight. An X blue, gain control of target creature with mana value X or less. If X is 5 or more, create a token that's a copy of that creature. This is just a way to steal a permanent. Stealing a permanent is objectively one of the strongest things you can do in Magic. I want to be able to do it in here because, like I said, we are trying to have the best of all worlds, being able to be aggro, but also being able to go over the top of something. So being able to steal a permanent is, it can win a game. So I definitely wanted that ability, but only one copy because it's more of a late game, I'll cast this and win the game card, so I don't want many copies of. But our other late game win the game X spell, you may have guessed it already, is Doppelgang. Simic blue, green, XXX. And for each of X target permanents, create X tokens that are copies of that permanent is its text box. That text box doesn't make a whole lot of sense, so basically if you put X to be 1, you'll have to pay 1/1/1 green blue, so 5 mana, to copy one target permanent and make one token copy of it. So I can pay 5 mana to copy a Dream, Do, and Transfer and get its ETB again. I'm sorry, enter the battlefield has been phased out, it's now just enter, but I digress. This does scale well though, so you can, the X can be 2, so you pay 2, 2, 2, green, blue, so 8, and then you can target 2 permanents, and you make 2 token copies of each of them. So I can tap a Dream, Do, and Transfer and a Clifftop Lookout and get 2 copies of each of them. And the more you go, this can even target lands, by the way. So but once you start copying lands, you're going to have a lot of mana, so you can pump even more mana into this. Like once you're paying 3, I've never paid more than 3 for this in this Frogs deck, but so maybe this isn't the best option, but it's still hard. Like if we're ramping naturally with Clifftop Lookout anyway, it's hard to deny a Doppelgang, because like you can target anything on the field. Like if an opponent has an Ur-Brask Forge or something, and you make X = 3, you'll make 3 copies of Ur-Brask Forge and whatever else you target. So it scales incredibly well. It's a very strong card, but couldn't put more than 2 in here. And like I said, these 3 spells right here are our top end. I don't want to draw them in multiple copies early game, so that's why there's so few, but there's so much draw power in the deck that I often don't need to do that. In addition to the fact that we can just get an early curve out aggro beat down and just win that way before I ever need any of those. So that is the main deck. Now let's quickly move on to the sideboard. I have 3 copies of Tyvar's Stand, which is another X spell, X in green. Target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains hexproof and indestructible until the end of the turn. Doesn't protect versus Farewell, but any other like destroy effect or targeting effect, it'll protect. So you can even have X = 0, so you can just pay a green and have it become a Snakeskin Veil or Tomio's Safekeeping or whatever. So it's a good card, but I don't think it's main deck worthy. Decks with like lots of cut downs and go for the throats or whatever, it might be worth bringing in. So 3 copies in the board. Then I have 2 copies of Horned Lockwhale, an adventure from Wilds of Eldraine. The main card is a 6 mana creature with Flash and Ward 2, and if it enters, if you flash it in, it enters tapped. That's the creature side, but it has an adventure for 2, an instant. Return target attacking creature you don't control to the its controller chooses whether they want to put it on the top or bottom of their library, so it's blue removal effectively. It doesn't put the creature in the graveyard or exile it or anything, but they do have to draw it again and cast it again, so it's blue removal, really. Very good card here. It's dual purpose, like if there's a lot of aggression, this can bounce something back, but it can also just be like if my opponent is dead set on like I keep saying Farewell, Sunfall, sweepers and stuff, this can be a nice flash threat that gets around sorcery speed removal. So yeah, nice versatility here, but only 2 copies. Speaking of flash threat, I also have Tishana's Tidebinder, 3 mana flash ETB, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. that right there is insane. Stops planeswalker activated abilities, stops like random enchantments effects like Virtue of Loyalty or Persistence or whatever, stops Itali triggers, Atraxa triggers, Simulacrum Synthesizer triggers, and there's more. If an ability of an artifact, creature, or planeswalker is countered this way, that permanent loses all abilities until Tishana's Tidebinder leaves the battlefield. So if they can't out the Tidebinder, that permanent just doesn't have its abilities, which is wild, bro. Unfortunately, that only works on creatures, artifacts, or planeswalkers, so you can't just out like a Virtue of Persistence. You can do it once, but it's eventually going to get its value back on. So we have other means of dealing with that, including Tranquil Frillback, a 3-mana dinosaur. When it ETBs, you can pay a green up to 3 times and activate. For each green you pay, you can activate one of the effects: destroy target artifact or enchantment, gain 4 life, or exile target player's graveyard. So there's a lot of applications for this. Graveyard hate is one of the most important, but I mean, they're all equally important. Coming down and destroying an artifact or enchantment is amazing. Say goodbye to temporary lockdown that wipes away all these cards here. Say goodbye to Urbrask Forge. Say goodbye to Innkeeper's Talent or any of the talents. Yeah, just a very good card there. And then being able to stabilize and gain 4 life versus aggro is always nice. Tranquil Flowback is one of my favorite sideboard cards, just in general, because of how good it is at doing what it does. And then finally, this is a little wild of me, but I got 4 Baloths just because I'm so tired of the mono black no skill, just mindlessly spam discard and hope. Trying to punish them with 4 Baloths. The life gain could also be nice versus super aggressive aggro, but we're mainly here memeing against the meme mono black discard decks, which aren't even very meta anymore, I don't think. I think that fad died out like last week, but still obnoxious, especially because there's like the dream is your opponent turn 1 Hopeless Nightmares, so you just discard this, put it right into play, and then you have a 0 mana 4/4. So that's the dream, but on the turns where you actually draw your Baloth, they'll just magically not play their Hopeless Nightmare and instead wait until the next turn, then just exile it with Cruel Claws Heist or whatever. It's so damn tilting, bro. But that's the deck. Oh, another niche interaction is that you can bounce your Baloth back to your hand with Mistbreath Elder, and just keep using it as discard fodder for the mono black decks, or bounce your Frill back to keep gaining life, or destroying artifacts and enchantments, or bounce back your Tidebinder to keep stifling whatever they have. I guess you can bounce back your Horned Lockwell too to get the adventure half. Just a lot of inherent synergy with this shell. I think they really knocked it out of the park with frogs. Like, this isn't even the full frog package. Like, there's other options. There's like Splash Portal, which is a trap by every metric. I would never consider it. Some people I've seen are trying it. Sometimes they get the nut draw, but not a good card. There's also Dowerport Mage, which I haven't messed with. I tried messing with Clement, but I just didn't. It didn't really fit what we were trying to do here. So Frogs has a lot going on, and I like the archetype. This and I've played with this on Magic Arena and made it up to Mythic. So yeah, I definitely got a lot out of this deck, and I love it. So I bought it in paper and made this video. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I can play with this someday for someone. That would be nice if I can get out to a standard event sometime. But until then, I guess that's all. So thank you guys for watching, and look forward to more Magic content. See you guys next time.